Howdy all, hope you're all keeping well. Thought I'd just have a bit of a start at the back side of the Ballarat Cemetery, which is a Chinese section, and just have a bit of a prowl through the cemetery. Just actually come here more for a bit of a photo shoot, have a bit of a wander around, just to chill the mind a little bit, because sometimes you need that. And yeah, I'll just have a bit of a walk around, and got a little bit of gear, but just a K2 and an EVP meter, EVP recorder I should say, and probably pull them out a little bit later, but just thought I'd have a bit of a walk through some of the sections that I normally don't walk around. Now this whole section here, this lawn section here, and as you can see the headstone section here, it's all dedicated to the Chinese. And the interesting thing, maybe all you people out there can inform me a little bit or enlighten me a little bit more. From what I gather, with the headstones themselves, they have the headstones at the foot of the grave. Now, as opposed to the back of the grave like us Westerners do. Now, I can't read any of these, of course, because I don't speak Chinese, so I can't tell you what they say. Although the missus quite often says I speak triple Chinese. But anyway, but yeah, so if there's anyone out there who can sort of like inform me, leave a comment there, whether I'm right or not. But from what I take it, the gravestones lay at the foot of the grave with the Chinese, and I'm not sure whether the head lays right behind the headstone itself, with the head sort of pointing towards the east and the feet to the west, or whether it's the feet are at the back of the headstones and the head is pointing towards the west. So I'm not too sure, but anybody out there who knows, please leave a comment and just clarify that for me. Just have a bit of a quick wander through here, and you know, as with most cemeteries, you do find areas like this. There's probably a lot of unmarked graves, so I apologise for any people here if I'm actually walking over your graves. I normally feel it and sense it, and try to steer clear of areas that I feel might have something there. But I think it's not too bad. So far so good. I'm not feeling like I'm treading on any unwanted ground here. As I said before, I've just more or less come out for a bit of a wander around to some sections of this cemetery that I haven't actually had a bit of a look at, because it is quite large, and sometimes when we come out with our gear we just go to certain sections, and that's about it really. You could probably spend all night out here. Anyway, I hope this vid finds you well. I hope you're coping well with life, because life is certainly shown us all that it's full of changes. It's a little smoking hut. And unfortunately, life is full of changes. We just got to go with it sometimes. there's not a lot that we can actually do. We just have to not so much grin and bear it, but just go with the flow, just make the best of what we can. Much like these Chinese miners here, they all came to Ballarat to mine for gold, send money back to their families, and if you can imagine, in this time, no houses, not like there is now. This cemetery is right in the middle of suburbia, Ballarat suburbia anyway. Ballarat's probably got about 105,000 people, I think, now. Back in the day, back in the 1800s, it certainly wasn't anywhere near that type of population, that's for sure. There's a lot of bird life that comes out here too, which is really nice to see. Some cockies over there just flying off. Have a lot of rosellas, and you find that, you know, in cemeteries that do have a lot of bird life, animal life, whether it's, you know, foxes or rabbits or whatever. The energies in those cemeteries are usually pretty good, because animals have exceptional senses. So if there's something they don't like, they're gone. You know, the animals are very, very cautious, and there's only been one cemetery that was like that I went into, where there was not one sign of animal life, and we'd gone back about 5 or 6 times. Long story associated with that cemetery, but we had to do a massive clearing in that cemetery on the 5th time that we were there, and it's not a very nice story. I wouldn't like to go through what we did there again, but it had to be done to release a lot of souls from being trapped in that certain area. And we actually released 78 souls on that day, which was amazing. And I had quite a bit of a battle on my hands with that one. Something that was definitely not nice, but we won't go into that here. But that particular cemetery, those 5 times that we went there, it was just, the vibe there was absolute garbage, absolute yuck, not very nice at all. And there was absolutely no animal life, no birds, no foxes, no rabbits, no nothing. And after the 5th time we went back for a 6th time, and we were just absolutely amazed to see the amount of rabbits, magpies, different bird species. And it was just amazing to see how a spiritual energy can put such a hold over a cemetery in a negative way, that the animals actually feel it and sense it, and they stay well away from that cemetery. As you can tell, I'm wandering around and just doing a little bit of filming, do a little bit of ranting and raving. I've actually got a lot to say and nothing to say, which is sometimes a good thing. Been watching a few different YouTube channels too, by the way, and we're really enjoying some that we've found that are very for real. It's sadly, there's a lot of other YouTube channels out there that have got big names and big followers and all that, And there goes the train. Audio. And a train's going out to Ararat. And unfortunately, I've really got to laugh. Hello cockies. Hello cockies. Because I've seen so much, it's a nice site. I've seen so much fake stuff on YouTube, and it really gets on my goat. And you can just tell that they're so fake, you know, and I don't have time for fake channels, but I get a good laugh out of watching them sometimes. And seriously, there are a couple of really good channels. I'll give you a quick shout out, just off the top of my head. I'm terrible with names and whatever else, but first off, a big shout out to Ghost Pictures, Yvette, fantastic person, very real what she does. Jared King TV, hey Jared, very real man, very real. And Ghostly Whisperers, Raw Reach Paranormal, just a couple off the top of my head. Very real. There's no bullshitting around with those people, and what you see is what you get, you know, as they go off on investigations. They get what they get. If they don't get anything, they don't get anything. They show that as well. That's what you want. There's just that many fakers out there, and there's a lot of people out there. That's even in my life, you know. It's like I've worked with a few people in the paranormal areas of life, and different areas of life as well, but of course, where you meet people with a lot of ego and a lot of you know, just thinking of the money side of things, and not the education, and they're not thinking about the spirit. Because one big thing with me is spirit are people too. You know, just because if you die, when you leave your body, you're still you. The essence of you is still you. You're still an essence. You're still a person. So when we go off investigating, like some of the guys that I just mentioned before, we always give respect to spirit. And we certainly don't treat them like shit, like some of... I'm not going to mention any channels, but you know, there's a few American channels that I've actually seen that treat spirit like absolute shit, and it's so wrong. You know, it's like, for all I know, it could be their grandmother or grandfather coming along on an investigation and trying to say hi, and they're treating them like shit. It's like, what do they know? They're not mediums or anything like that. So, and that's another thing too, if you're lucky enough to have a group that has got a couple of people in it that do have medium tendencies, it's always a bit of a bonus, because they can always pick up and feel what the energy is. And look, to be honest, when you wander around in cemeteries, spirit don't hang around in cemeteries. You know, it's like people fear cemeteries. I don't know why. You know, it's like cemeteries are remembrance of the history of people, history of the area. I mean, if you were a ghost, If you'd left your body, why would you want to hang around your own grave? Yes, there are times when we go into cemeteries and we do pick up on spirit. And I'm going to tell you, this one here is right in the middle of suburbia. So the chances of spirit roaming around the area, and this is a gold mining area, it was an old gold mining area, so there's a lot that's happened here, a lot of history, a lot of energy, a lot of emotions, and spirit that haven't crossed over. It's quite a cool one. Spirit that haven't crossed over, yeah, they will drift around the area, and they could probably drift for a few kilometers around the area because that's the area they lived in, that's the area they know. So if they haven't crossed over, you very muchly hang around the area. They wouldn't be hanging around a cemetery, but if they realise that something's going on and that somebody wants to try to communicate with spirit, and they are near a cemetery or lived around a cemetery, or maybe even visiting relatives of theirs that are in a cemetery, that's always a possibility, then your chances are that you might pick up on some spirit in a cemetery. This particular one, in the area I just walked through, actually, it was sort of lady in period clothes. Now, I think she was just, that was one particular night, and it was just before sunset, so we still had a bit of light, and you could see a shadow of a woman walking through, and you could just make out she had period clothes on. She was in that area over there, which was really quite interesting. And she was more like a residual energy, like she wasn't an intelligent one. We did try to follow and try to call to her, but no responses. And generally, if you get no responses, it's a residual energy. It's like looking at a videotape of the past. Couple more areas of the cemetery. One I first walked through, and I sort of filmed a little bit of it just in silence. I'll probably put a little bit of music over that bit of vid. But there was a young boy who was darting between some trees and some headstones one night when I was here with a mate when I first came to Ballarat, and he was playing peekaboo behind the gravestones, and as much as I chased him around trying to coax him to come and have a chat, he kept just playing and finally disappeared, you know. We've also had a fella here we communicated with in the Rotunda who was quite a character. He ended up being an entertainer of the area in the 1800s, and he gave us his name, his full name, first, last name, his nickname as well, and did a bit of research onto him and found out that indeed he was an entertainer of the period that he'd mentioned, and he was quite actually well known at the time. So, and he just lived in the area around here. He was part of the history, and he sensed that we were what we were doing, that we were exploring the paranormal and trying to communicate with spirit, and he obliged. He realized that, and he came towards us and he communicated with us quite a bit one evening, and we've bumped into him a couple of times before. So the sun's making its way down. And I always find cemeteries very peaceful. I don't find anything bad about them or scary about them. It's just a lot of history. Obviously, Eureka diggers. For those in other countries, the Eureka Stockade was an area where we'll call it the rebels were fighting the authority, and there was a lot of deaths. It was over land rights, taxes, money, all sorts of things. And it's like the government were diddling the hard workers, the battlers, out of their money, trying to claim big taxes. And it's a big story to it, the Eureka Stockade. You can look that up on the internet. And this whole area is dedicated to the Eureka Stockade, so a lot of people who lived in that era back in the 1860s, 1870s, buried here. Bit of a war memorial thing in front of us we'll head towards. As always, when you go off doing a bit of a paranormal investigation, or even if you're indeed just going into a cemetery to do some photos or vids or whatever, it always pays to do a little bit of gold lighting and protection before you come in, because you just don't know what sort of energies are around. And like I said, it's not necessarily from the cemetery, but it's like the energy of death can attract negative energy. And if you're that way inclined that you have fear, you'll attract negative energy towards you too. So the best thing to do is always do a little bit of gold lighting, a little bit of grounding, protection, and yeah, you're pretty muchly right. And just have that very strong intent that you're coming into an area, whether it's an abandoned house or an asylum, a jail, or a cemetery. Have that intent that you come for a positive reason. You come with lots of respect for the people who lay buried here, and respect for their families as well.